Baš Čelik, a Serbian fairy tale. There was once a king who had 3 sons and 3 daughters. When he grew old and it was time for him to die, he called his sons and daughters to his bedside. He told his sons to marry off their sisters to the first suitor who came to ask for them. "Give them away," he said, "so you won't be cursed." Then the king passed away. After his death, time went by until one night there was loud knocking on the door. The entire palace shook with strange noises, screams, singing, and flashes of light. It seemed as if fire itself surrounded the palace. Everyone inside was terrified, trembling with fear. Suddenly a voice spoke. "Open the door, princes." The oldest son said, "Don't open it." The middle one added, "Under no circumstances should you open it." But the youngest said, "I will open the door," and he rushed to do so. As soon as he opened the door, something entered the palace. They couldn't see what it was, only flames pouring everywhere. The voice spoke again. "I have come to ask for the eldest sister's hand, and I will take her right now. I will not wait, nor will I come back to ask again. Give me your answer now. Will you give her, or will you not?" The eldest brother said, "I won't give her. How can I when I don't even know who you are or where you're from? You've come in the middle of the night demanding to take her away without any explanation." The middle brother also said, "I will not give our sister tonight." But the youngest spoke up, "I will give her away. Don't you remember what our father told us?" He took his sister by the hand and said, "May you be safe and blessed." As their sister crossed the threshold, everyone in the palace fell to the ground in fear. There was thunder, flashes of light, and a roar as the entire palace shook. But then it passed, and the morning came. When daylight broke, they searched everywhere for any sign of what had happened or where that force had taken her, but nothing in this world could tell them anything, as if it had never been there at all. The next night, at the same time, the same roaring noise surrounded the palace. Someone began speaking at the door again. "Open the door, princes." Terrified, they opened it. A powerful presence began to speak. "Give us the middle sister. We have come to ask for her hand." The eldest brother said, "I will not give her." The middle one added, "I will not give our sister." But the youngest brother said, "I will give her away. Have you forgotten what our father told us?" He took his sister by the hand and said, "May you be safe and blessed." That presence took the girl away. The next morning, the brothers searched the palace grounds and beyond, looking for any sign of where that force had gone. But nothing in this world could tell them anything, as if it had never been there.
On the 3rd night, at the same time, the palace shook again from the ground up, and a voice shouted, "Open the door!" The princes jumped up and opened the door. A powerful presence entered and declared, "We have come to ask for your youngest sister." The eldest and the middle brothers shouted, "We will not give her. This is the 3rd night, and we must at least know where we are sending our youngest sister and to whom, so we can visit her as our sister." But the youngest brother spoke, "I will give her away if you do not. Have you forgotten what our father told us before he died? It wasn't that long ago." He took his sister by the hand and said, "Take her, and may she be safe and joyful." And with a loud roar, the presence took her away that very moment. After some time had passed, the brothers began to speak among themselves. "Dear God, what a great mystery! What happened to our sisters? We have no clue where they went or whom they married." Finally, one said to the others, "Let's go find our sisters." They immediately began to prepare, gathered money for the journey, and set off to search for their sisters. Traveling through a mountain, they walked the entire day. When night fell, they decided they needed to camp near water, and so they found a lake and settled there for the night, preparing to eat dinner. As they began to lie down to sleep, the eldest brother said, "You two sleep, and I will keep watch." The two younger brothers fell asleep while the eldest kept guard. In the middle of the night, the lake began to stir. The eldest brother was frightened when he saw something coming straight towards him from the center of the lake, a terrifying dragon with 2 heads charging at him. He drew his knife and struck it, cutting off its heads. He also cut off the ears and kept them in his pocket, throwing the body and the heads back into the water. The morning came, and the brothers awoke, unaware of what happened during the night. The eldest brother awoke them, but said nothing about the dragon. They moved on, traveling further. As evening approached, they spoke about needing to camp near water again, feeling scared as they had wandered into dangerous mountains. They found another small lake and decided to spend the night there. They lit a fire, ate dinner, and lay down to sleep. The middle brother said, "You two sleep, and I will keep watch." The other two fell asleep while he stood guard. Suddenly, a loud splash came from the lake, and out came a dragon with 2 heads, ready to devour all 3 of them. He jumped up, drew his knife, and cut off both the dragon's heads. He then cut off the ears and put them in his pocket, throwing the rest into the lake. The other brothers slept through it all, unaware of what happened.
When morning came, the middle brother shouted, "Wake up, brothers! It's morning!" They quickly got up, got ready, and continued their journey, still unsure of their location or even the country they were in. They grew worried about dying of hunger in the wilderness and prayed to God to find a village or town, or at least some sign of civilization. They had been wandering the same barren land for 3 days with no end in sight. Finally, they arrived early at a large lake and decided not to travel further that day, but to camp by the lake, fearing they might not find water later. They made a large fire, had dinner, and prepared to sleep. The youngest brother then said, "You two sleep, and I will keep watch tonight." The 2 older brothers lay down and quickly fell asleep, while the youngest kept watch, his eyes constantly scanning the lake. In the middle of the night, the lake began to churn, and a splash put out half of their fire. He drew his sword and stood by the remaining fire. Soon, a 3-headed dragon emerged, charging at the brothers to devour them. The youngest brother, with a brave heart, didn't wake his brothers. Instead, he faced the dragon alone, striking it 3 times and cutting off all 3 heads. He then cut off the ears, keeping them in his pocket, and threw the body into the lake. The splash had put out the fire completely, so he went into the wilderness to find something to rekindle it. Not wanting to wake his brothers, he climbed a tall tree, hoping to spot something. After a while, he saw a distant fire glowing and decided to go there to bring back some embers. He walked for a long time, always feeling it was close, until he finally reached a cave. Inside, a large fire was burning, and 9 giants were roasting 2 men over it, one on each side of the fire. There was also a large pot filled with pieces of human flesh. Seeing this, the prince was terrified and wanted to turn back, but he couldn't. He shouted, "Good evening, my friends. I've been looking for you for a long time." They welcomed him warmly, saying, "May God help you if you are truly our friend." He replied, "I will stay with you forever and give my life for you." "Well then," they said, "if you are truly our friend, will you eat human flesh and join us on raids?" The prince answered, "I will do whatever you do." They all sat around the fire, took out the meat, and began to eat. The prince pretended to eat, but secretly threw the meat behind him. After they finished, they said, "Let's go hunting, for we need food for tomorrow." The 9 giants set off, with the prince joining them as the 10th. When they reached the town, they uprooted 2 large pine trees to use as ladders. They placed one against the wall and told the prince, "Climb up first and we'll hand you the other tree so you can place it inside the wall to help us all climb down into the town." The prince climbed up and said, "I don't know what to do. I'm not used to this place. One of you come up and show me." One of the giants climbed up, took hold of the tree, and placed it inside the wall. As soon as the giant was in position, the prince drew his sword and cut off the giant's head, sending the body falling into the town. He then said, "Come up one by one, and I'll help you down." Not knowing what had happened, the giants climbed up one by one, and the prince cut off each of their heads. After dealing with all 9, he climbed down into the town. He wandered through the empty streets, realizing the giants had wiped out most of the people. Eventually, he found a tall tower with a lit room at the top. He entered, climbed the stairs, and found a room decorated with gold, silk, and velvet. Inside was a sleeping maiden, the only person left. The prince was struck by her beauty. Suddenly, he saw a large snake descending the wall, its head moving close to hers, ready to bite her forehead. He rushed forward, drew his small knife, and pinned the snake to the wall, saying, "May no one remove this knife but me." Then he hurried back to the giant's cave, took some fire, and returned to his brothers, who were still asleep. He rekindled the fire, and when the sun rose, he woke them, and they continued their journey. Later that day, they found a road leading to the town. The town was ruled by a powerful king who would often walk through its streets in tears, mourning for his people, fearing that his daughter would also be eaten by the giants. That very morning, he walked through the town and saw the pine trees leaning against the wall, as well as the 9 headless giants. He was overjoyed, and the people gathered, praying to God for the health of their savior. Meanwhile, servants from the king's palace came and reported that a snake had tried to bite the princess, but had been pinned to the wall. The king rushed to his daughter's room and found the snake pinned, but he couldn't remove the knife. The king then issued an order throughout his kingdom, announcing, "Whoever killed the giants and pinned the snake, let them come to be rewarded with great gifts and take the king's daughter as a wife." This proclamation spread throughout the entire kingdom, and the king ordered taverns to be set up along the main roads to ask every traveler if they knew who had slain the giants, so that if anyone found out, they could inform the king and be rewarded. This was done, and the taverns were set up along the main roads, asking each traveler and spreading the word. After some time, the 3 royal brothers, still searching for their sisters, arrived at one of these taverns and decided to stay there for the night. After dinner, the innkeeper joined them and began to boast about the heroic deeds he had done, then asked them, "And what about you? Have you done anything heroic yourselves?" The eldest brother began to speak. "When I set out with my brothers on this journey, on the first night, we camped by a lake in a vast wilderness. While my brothers slept and I kept watch, suddenly a dragon emerged from the lake, ready to devour us. I drew my knife and cut off its head. If you don't believe me, here are the ears from the head," and he pulled out the ears and placed them on the table. When the middle brother heard this, he said, "When I kept watch during our second camp, I also killed a two-headed dragon. If you don't believe me, here are the ears from both heads," and he showed the ears. The youngest brother remained silent. The innkeeper turned to him and asked, "Well, young man, your brothers are heroes. What about you? Have you done anything heroic?" The youngest then began to speak. "I, too, have done a little something. When we camped that night by the lake in the wilderness, my brother slept while I kept watch. In the middle of the night, the entire lake started to stir, and a three-headed dragon emerged, ready to devour us all. I drew my sword and cut off all three heads. If you don't believe me, here are the 6 ears from the dragon." Even his brothers were astonished, and he continued, "After that, the fire went out, and I went into the wilderness to find some fire. Wandering through the mountains, I found a cave with 9 giants," and he went on to describe everything he had done, and everyone was amazed. When the innkeeper heard this, he quickly ran to inform the king. The king gave him a great reward of money and immediately sent his men to bring all 3 royal brothers to him. When they stood before the king asked the youngest prince, "Was it you who did all these marvelous deeds, slaying the giants and saving my daughter from death?" "Yes, your majesty," the youngest prince replied. The king then gave him his daughter in marriage and made him second only to the king in his kingdom. To the 2 elder brothers, the king said, "If you wish, I will also find brides for you and build you fine estates." But they revealed the entire truth to the king, explaining they were on a journey to find their lost sisters. When the king heard everything, he kept only the youngest brother as his son-in-law, while he gave the 2 elder brothers 2 mules loaded with gold, and they returned to their kingdom. The youngest prince, however, always thought of his sisters and wanted to go search for them, but he also didn't want to leave his wife, and the king forbade him from leaving, so he longed for his sisters constantly. One day, the king went hunting and said to the prince, "Stay here at the palace, and here are 9 keys. You may open 3 or 4 rooms, and you will find silver, gold, weapons, and many other treasures there. You may open all 8 rooms, but do not dare open the 9th one, for if you do, you will suffer greatly." The king then left, leaving the prince alone at the palace. As soon as the king departed, the prince opened 1 room, then the 2nd, and so on, until he had opened all 8 rooms, and he saw all kinds of treasures inside. Finally, he came to the door of the 9th room and thought to himself, "I've faced many wonders, and now I shouldn't dare open this room?" So he opened that room as well. When he entered, he saw a man shackled to his knees in iron, with both hands bound up to the elbows. There were 4 iron posts in the room, and chains from each post met around the man's neck, keeping him firmly bound so he could not move. In front of him was a golden fountain with water flowing from a golden spout into a golden trough. Nearby stood a bucket decorated with precious stones. The man wanted to drink, but he could not reach it. Seeing all this, the prince was amazed and stepped back, but the man spoke. "Come closer to me, I beg you, in the name of the living God." The prince approached, and the man said, "Do me a kindness and give me a bucket of water to drink, and I swear you will receive another life in return." The prince thought, what could be better than gaining an extra life? So he took the bucket, filled it with water, and gave it to him, who drank it. The prince then asked, "What is your name, by God?" The man replied, "My name is Baš Čelik." The prince turned to leave, but Baš Čelik called out to him, "Give me another bucket of water, and I will give you a second life." The prince thought, if he gives me 2 lives, and I already have 1, that makes 3, a great gift. So he took the bucket and gave him more water. Baš Čelik drank it. As the prince turned to leave and began to close the door, Baš Čelik said, "Oh, brave one, come back to me. Since you've already done me 2 favors, do me a third, and I will give you a third life. Take this bucket, fill it with water, and pour it over my head. I will give you a third life in exchange." When the prince heard this, he returned, took the bucket, filled it with water, and poured it over Baš Čelik's head. As soon as the water touched his head, the chains around his neck burst apart, and all the iron that had bound Baš Čelik shattered. Baš Čelik leaped up like lightning, spread his wings, and in the same instant took the king's daughter, his savior's wife, under his arm and disappeared from sight. Now imagine the fear of the king's wrath. When the king returned from the hunt, the prince confessed everything. The king was greatly troubled and said, "Why did you do this? Didn't I warn you not to open the 9th room?" The prince replied, "Do not be angry with me. I will go after Baš Čelik and bring back my wife." The king tried to dissuade him, saying, "Do not go under any circumstances. You do not know who Baš Čelik is. It cost me a great deal of money and many soldiers to capture him. Stay with me, and I will find you another bride. Do not worry, I still love you as my own son." But the prince would not listen. He took money for the journey, mounted his horse, and set off to find Baš Čelik. Traveling for a long time, the prince eventually arrived in a town. As he entered, a maiden shouted from a balcony, "Prince, dismount your horse and come into the courtyard." When the prince entered the courtyard, the maiden came to meet him, and he recognized his eldest sister. They embraced warmly and kissed each other. "Come, brother, let's go to the tower," she said. Once they were inside the tower, the prince asked his sister who her husband was. She replied, "I married the Dragon King. My husband is a dragon. But brother, I must hide you well, because my husband has said he would kill his brothers-in-law if he ever saw them. Let me test him first. If he means no harm to you, I will tell him about you." She hid her brother and his horse, and evening came. They prepared dinner and waited for the Dragon King. As soon as he entered, the entire palace lit up and shone brightly. As soon as he entered, he called out to his wife, "Wife, I smell a human scent. Who is here? Tell me right now." She replied, "There is no one here." But he insisted, "That cannot be." His wife then said, "By God, I ask you honestly, what would you do if my brothers were here?" The Dragon King answered, "I would kill the eldest and middle brothers and roast them, but I wouldn't harm the youngest." Then she said, "My youngest brother, your brother-in-law, has come." When the Dragon King heard this, he shouted, "Bring him here." The sister brought her brother before the king, and the Dragon King jumped up, spread his arms wide, and they embraced and kissed each other. "Welcome, brother-in-law," said the Dragon King. "Good to see you, brother-in-law," replied the prince. They sat down together, and the prince told him everything from beginning to end. Then the Dragon King said, "Where are you headed? Just 3 days ago, Baš Čelik passed by carrying your wife. I met him with 7,000 dragons, but we couldn't stop him. Leave this devil alone, I beg you. I will give you as much gold as you want. Just go back home." But the prince refused to listen, and the next day he prepared to leave. When the Dragon King saw that he could not dissuade the prince from his journey, he took out a feather and gave it to him, saying, "Listen carefully to what I tell you. Take this feather, and when you find yourself in great need and face Baš Čelik, burn this feather. I will come to you immediately with all my forces to help." The prince took the feather and continued his journey. Traveling once again, he eventually came to another large town. As he walked through the town, another maiden shouted from a balcony, "Prince, dismount your horse and come into the courtyard." The prince led his horse into the courtyard, where he was met by his middle sister. They embraced and kissed each other, and she led him to the tower. After she had stabled the horse, she led her brother upstairs. The prince asked her how she ended up there, and she told him everything. He then asked, "Whom did you marry?" She replied, "I married the Falcon King, and he will return this evening. Let me hide you well, because he has threatened my brothers." She hid him, and soon after, the Falcon King arrived. As soon as he arrived, the entire tower shook from his great power. They immediately set dinner, but as soon as he entered, he said to his wife, "I smell a human scent." She replied, "There is no one here, my husband." After a long conversation, she asked him, "Would you harm my brothers if they came here?" The Falcon King replied, "I would torment the eldest and middle brothers, but I would not harm the youngest." She then told him about her brother. The Falcon King quickly ordered him to be brought forward. When the king saw the prince, he jumped up, spread his arms wide, and they embraced and kissed. "Welcome, brother-in-law," said the Falcon King. "Good to see you, brother-in-law," replied the prince, and they immediately sat down to dinner. After dinner, the king asked his brother-in-law where he was headed, and the prince answered that he was looking for Baš Čelik. He told him the entire story, but the king tried to advise him against it. "Do not go further. I will tell you about Baš Čelik. On the same day he took your wife, I met him with 5,000 falcons, and we fought fiercely. The blood reached our knees, and yet we couldn't stop him. So I advise you to return home, and I will give you as much wealth as you want." But the prince said, "Thank you for everything, but I will not turn back. I must find Baš Čelik." Thinking to himself, "Why shouldn't I? I still have 3 lives." When the Falcon King saw that he couldn't change the prince's mind, he took out a feather and gave it to him, saying, "Take this feather, and when you find yourself in great danger, strike a fire and burn it. I will come to you with all my falcons to help." The prince took the feather and continued his journey to find Baš Čelik. He traveled on for a long time until he came to a 3rd town. As soon as he entered, a maiden shouted from a balcony, "Dismount your horse and come into the courtyard." The prince led his horse into the courtyard, and there he found his youngest sister. They embraced and kissed each other, and she led him to the tower and took his horse to the stable. He asked her, "Whom did you marry, sister? Who is your husband?" She replied, "My husband is the Eagle King." When the king came home that evening, his wife greeted him, but he said nothing. Instead, he asked, "Who has come here? Tell me immediately." She replied, "No one," and they began to eat. After some time, she asked, "Would you harm my brothers if they came here?" The king answered, "I would kill your eldest and middle brothers, but I would not harm the youngest. I would always help him whenever I could." She then told him, "My youngest brother, your brother-in-law, has come to see me." The king ordered that he be brought before him. When the king saw him, he rose to his feet, and they embraced and kissed each other. "Welcome, brother-in-law," said the Eagle King. "Good to see you, brother-in-law," replied the prince, and they sat down to dinner. As they talked about many things, the prince eventually said that he was searching for Baš Čelik. When the Eagle King heard this, he tried to dissuade him. "Do not pursue this devilish enemy, brother-in-law. Stay here with me, and you will want for nothing." But the prince would not listen and prepared to leave at dawn. Seeing that he could not stop him, the Eagle King gave him a feather and said, "Take this feather, and if you are ever in danger, strike a fire and burn it. I will come with my eagles to help you." The prince took the feather and continued his journey to find Baš Čelik. He traveled from town to town until he finally found his wife in a cave. When she saw him, she was shocked and said, "By God, how did you end up here?" He told her everything and said, "Run, wife, let's flee." But she replied, "Where would we go? Baš Čelik will catch us immediately, kill you, and bring me back." The prince, knowing he still had 3 lives, convinced her to flee with him, and so they ran. When Baš Čelik found out, he quickly caught up with them and shouted, "Prince, how dare you steal my wife?" He took her back and said, "I will spare your life this time because I promised you 3 lives. Now leave, but do not come back for her or you will die." Baš Čelik took the prince's wife and left, and the prince was left alone, not knowing what to do. Determined, he decided once again to go after his wife. When he approached the cave, he waited for Baš Čelik to leave and then led his wife away. But Baš Čelik soon discovered this, chased after them, and shouted, "Would you prefer that I shoot you with an arrow or cut you down with my sword?" The prince begged for mercy, and Baš Čelik said, "I now spare your second life, but do not dare come back for your wife again. If you do, I will kill you on the spot." He took the prince's wife and left, and the prince was left alone, still wondering how to save his wife. He said to himself, "Why should I fear Baš Čelik when I still have 2 lives, one that he gave me and my own?" So he decided to return once more. When Baš Čelik was away, the prince found his wife and said, "Let's flee." She tried to dissuade him, telling him it was useless since Baš Čelik would catch them, but her husband insisted and they fled. Baš Čelik caught up with them and shouted, "This time I will not forgive you." The prince was terrified and pleaded for mercy, but Baš Čelik said, "I told you I would spare you 3 times. This is the 3rd time and there are no more chances. Go home and do not risk your life again." The prince realized that he could do nothing against this power and turned back, but he kept thinking of how to rescue his wife. Finally, he remembered what his brothers-in-law had told him and the feathers they had given him. He said to himself, "I will go after my wife a 4th time, and if I am in danger, I will burn the feathers so my brothers-in-law will come to help." He set off once again, returning to the cave where Baš Čelik held his wife. When he saw from a distance that Baš Čelik was away, he went to his wife. She was astonished and frightened, saying, "Why have you come back from me? Do you want to die?" But he explained about the feathers his brothers-in-law had given him, saying that they would come to his aid if he needed it. "That's why I came for you again," he said. "Let's go, quickly, before Baš Čelik returns." They fled, but Baš Čelik soon found out and chased after them, shouting from a distance, "Stop, prince! You haven't escaped yet!" The prince quickly pulled out the 3 feathers and his flint, striking it until a small flame caught, and he set the feathers alight. Just as the feathers started to burn, Baš Čelik caught up to them, drew his sword, and struck the prince, cutting him in half. At that very moment, a miracle happened. The Dragon King arrived with his dragons, the Falcon King with his falcons, and the Eagle King with his eagles. They fought Baš Čelik fiercely, and much blood was shed. Despite their efforts, Baš Čelik managed to grab the prince's wife and fled once more. The 3 kings stood around their fallen brother-in-law, the prince. They decided to revive him. They then asked the 3 fastest dragons who could bring water from the river Jordan the quickest. One said, "I can bring it in half an hour." Another said, "I can bring it in 15 minutes." The third said, "I can do it in just 9 moments." The kings shouted, "Go quickly, dragon." The dragon spread its fiery wings and, true to its word, brought back the water in just 9 moments. The kings took the water and poured it over the prince's wounds where he had been cut. As soon as they poured it, the wounds closed and the prince jumped up alive again. The kings advised him, "Go home now that you have escaped death." But the prince told them he wanted to try one last time to steal back his wife. His brothers-in-law warned him, "Do not go. You will surely die this time because you have no more lives left except the one given by God." But the prince wouldn't listen. The kings then said, "If you insist on going, do not take your wife immediately. Instead, ask her to find out where Baš Čelik's strength lies. Come back and tell us, and we will help you defeat him." The prince then sneaked back to his wife and told her to question Baš Čelik about where his power lay. He returned to his brothers-in-law. When Baš Čelik came home, his wife asked, "By God, where does your strength come from?" Baš Čelik replied, "My strength is in my sword." The wife then began to pray towards the sword. Seeing this, Baš Čelik laughed and said, "O foolish woman, my strength is not in my sword, but in my arrow." She then began to pray towards the arrow, and Baš Čelik said, "O woman, someone is surely teaching you to test me. I would guess your husband is still alive and telling you these things." She swore that no one was teaching her. Days later, the prince returned to his wife to find out what she had learned. She told her she still had not found out where Baš Čelik's power lay. He told her to keep trying and left again. When Baš Čelik returned, his wife again asked, "Where does your power come from?" Baš Čelik said, "Since you care so much about my strength, I will tell you the truth." He then explained, "Far from here there is a tall mountain. In that mountain lives a fox. Inside the fox is a heart, and inside that heart is a bird. That bird holds my strength. However, that fox is not easy to catch, as it can transform into many forms." The next day, when Baš Čelik left, the prince came back to his wife to hear what she had discovered. She told him everything. The prince immediately went to his brothers-in-law, who eagerly waited to hear where Baš Čelik's strength was. They all set off at once, and when they reached the mountain, they let the eagles hunt for the fox. The fox ran into a lake in the middle of the mountain and transformed into a 6-winged duck, but the falcons chased after it and drove it out. It then flew up into the clouds, but the dragons pursued it. The fox quickly turned back into a fox and ran along the ground, but there the eagles and the rest of the army caught it. The kings commanded that the fox be ripped open and the heart removed. They built a fire, cut open the heart, and pulled out the bird inside, throwing it into the flames. As the bird burned, Baš Čelik died. The prince then took his wife and returned home with her.